Hi everybody, my name is Amy Kimberly with ReLoved Designs by Amy, and I'm so excited to be here today to share with you my tip on how to get the perfect stripe. Okay, so I picked up this cute little gate leg table off of Facebook Marketplace, and I knew it would be the perfect table to do a grain sack stripe because I've done a few of these in the past, and they give a great farmhouse feel with this style of table. Any drop side style of table, the grain sack stripe looks great on. So I knew that this would be the route to go with this table, as well as since the table did have a few issues with the veneer on the top and on the sides. There was a couple little areas along here. There's a specific area about in the middle where the stripe is going to end up being, so I knew the stripe would help kind of cover those imperfections. And also there was some loose veneer, so where the veneer had come across, or had come apart, had come loose, separated from the edges. And the little tip for the day, if you're not sure how to fix something like that, what I found to be the easiest is I removed the sides. I put my wood glue down in those. I made sure that it was vertical. That way the glue, so I put it on basically on this flat side. I set it up and let the glue kind of run down in to make sure that it was getting down into the areas that I couldn't reach. And I put 1x4 pieces of wood cut in about 18-inch long sections and put those across with a little bit of wax paper. And the wax paper basically just helps to keep the wood and the wood glue, that extra wood glue that gets out and gets on different areas, it just keeps that from sticking to this wood surface, so it will prevent any further damage. And then once I clamped it in different areas and made sure everything was nice and flat, I let it sit for a good 24 hours. And I wouldn't let it sit for any less than a good 12 hours to make sure that it's nice and solid and ready to be sanded on. And then once I did that, I was ready to start prepping for the staining. So I used a 60 grit sandpaper on my orbital sander, and then finished it up with a 220, and then did 2 coats of the Kensington black gel stain with a sponge. Applied it with a sponge. And then once I let those dry really well, I'm now ready to start applying my tape to start doing the grain sack stripe. Okay, so I've measured and I found my center point, which is about right here, because it's about a 36-inch wide table, so 18 inches would be my center point. And I'm basically taking some delicate surface frog tape, which is the yellow color frog tape, and I'm going to just line it up to where it looks like my mark is about in the center of where my table is. And I'm just going to put this frog tape, just keeping it basically as straight. And the way that you would do this is basically making sure that there's no wrinkles in the tape. That's the easiest way I've found. And then I'm going to come over here and I'm going to do the same thing on this side. I'm just going to overlap my tape. Making sure that it's nice and straight. And it's not super duper important that this is burnished really well, because we're going to be taking this section up, because this will actually be our middle part of the grain sack stripe. If you don't know what a grain sack stripe is, it's basically the wide stripe with 2 smaller, thinner stripes on either side with a small space in between. That's one variation of a grain sack stripe. There's many different styles of a grain sack stripe. If you go on Pinterest or Google it, I'm sure there'll be several examples that show up. that are different widths and spacing in between each of the stripes. So it just is based off of personal preference which one you like the best. So I happen to like it where it's not super huge and wide in the middle, and then there's not too much space on either side, and that the side stripes are not as wide. So that's what we're gonna do today. These happen to be a specialty tape. One is 1/4 of an inch wide, the other is 1/8 of an inch wide. So I'm going to start off by using the 1/4 inch wide, and I'm going to basically do the same thing that I did with the yellow tape, only I'm going to use the edge of the yellow tape as my guide. So this is going to be my spacing for my second stripe on the side. So this one is going to be very important as far as making sure that it is burnished onto the wood, because we're going to be painting over this one. So you just want to make sure you line it up with the edge of the bigger stripe. Okay, and then over here, we do the same thing. This type of guideline could be used for any type of striping. So even if you were just doing straight stripes, you could use the first stripe as a guide for your next stripe, and so on and so forth. And it's a good way to make sure that your stripes stay even as well as straight. Do the other side the same way. Next one, on the other side. If you're putting this on top of paint, the delicate surface tape does help, but you also want to make sure that your paint is super dry, so I would recommend letting it dry at least 24 hours prior to putting any tape on. Okay, so then I'm going to take the 1/8 of an inch tape, and I'm going to do the same thing. The only thing that's important with this tape, or with this piece specifically, is making sure that it's straight. It doesn't really have to be burnished really well because it's going to be taken off. It's just our guideline as far as the spacing for the stripe that we want to do. Okay, so I've got everything taped off, and I ran out of tape in this size on the other side, but really on the ends, it's really not going to matter what size you use. You could use this size if you wanted to, because all it's doing is being a guide to make this center stripe. So you could really use whatever size on this end, you could use whatever size you want. So I just used another piece of this size tape to finish out because I was about, I don't know, 3 or 4 inches short on the other side. This one is really the important one, the one on the inside, because that's your spacer tape. So that's the one that really counts. This outside one doesn't really count for anything except for just, like I say, keeping the line straight for your actual stripe. Okay, so now we're ready to pull off the tape that where we want to actually paint our stripe. So that's going to be the center piece as well as the center of these 3 pieces on either side. So basically I'm just going to peel those off carefully. They should come right off. Okay. All right, so this is going to be our center stripe. Okay. And then peel off the center. The one on the right side. And we'll peel off the center of the one on the other side. All right, so now we have our grain sack stripe. We have our center stripe and our 2 outer smaller stripes. Just like that. So the next step would be to get the paint and start painting. Okay, so now I'm ready to paint my stripes. I've chosen to use Selznick Gray on this piece. I feel like it's a very good, it's my go-to anytime I want a warm gray that's basically a beige base. I will almost always pick the Selznick Gray. It's a beautiful color. And so I'm going to use 2 of Amy's brushes. I'm going to use the artist brush as well as just a 1.5 inch chip brush. So the artist brush will be for the smaller stripe and the chip brush will be for the larger stripe. Okay, I'm going to do the larger stripe first, so I'm just going to dip my brush in my can. I'm going to offload it, and then I'm going to start off by going this direction on my stripe. And the reason why I want to do that is because I want to seal that tape to the surface, and also I want to make sure that my tape is burnished. I did this before I went on camera, but you do want to make sure that that tape is burnished on there really well, so that way you don't have any pockets and you won't have any paint get up underneath there and mar up your stripe. And then I'm going to come this direction over top with just a little bit of paint. It's not taking a whole lot. Okay, same thing with this little delicate area, and this area is definitely tricky because there's lots of nooks and crannies. I'm not really worrying about the smaller stripe at this point because I'm going to come back with my artist brush and get it. I will definitely come back and do a second coat the this first coat is just to get a nice layer on there. Here to make it a little bit easier to work with. Making sure my little areas of detail here are, definitely want to make sure the tape is burnished down there. Okay. All right, so I'll get the other side. I'm gonna let this dry. And I'll come back with the artist brush and do the same thing with the smaller stripe, and then I'll let it dry and come back with a second coat. All right, so I'm back down to the last little bit here that needs to be painted for my second coat. So I'm gonna go ahead and finish that up. And then we'll remove the tape. And to finish this off, which I'm okay if it has a little bit of, you know, some holidays in there, which is areas that aren't quite covered with paint, because I kind of want to go for a little bit of a distressed or rustic look. And I'm also going to glaze this whenever I'm done, so that'll just add to the overall finish of it. Okay. All right, so we should be ready now to go ahead and take off the tape. So I'm going to go ahead and peel off this first one. Okay. Does look like it took a little bit of the stain off here in the corners, but I'm okay with that because I'm going to take some steel wool to it and kind of distress it up just a tad, just to rough it up just a little bit so it's not so perfect looking. If I didn't want that look though, I could always go back and kind of touch it up with a small brush. So basically that's our grain sack stripe. I hope you all enjoyed the tutorial. Like I said, you can do this guideline with any kind of stripe that you're looking to do. It works on just about any kind of stripe. And if you have any questions or comments, just leave them in the comments below. And I will be sure to respond to every single one of you. And I appreciate you watching. Thank you so much. Bye guys.
Thanks again for watching, everyone. Please be sure to like and follow me on Facebook and Instagram at ReLoved Designs by Amy.